How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Brian Halligan. This is my YouTube channel about biathlon. And in today's video, we are going to be watching a race all the way back from last March. I know that this doesn't seem too far back for a Throwback Thursday episode, but we have a special guest watching the race with us today, someone who is actually in the race. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vincent Bonacci.
Hello, everybody.
Vincent, what's up, dude?
Not much. Just hanging out in Obertiliac in a hotel. If you hear any background noise, there's some kids strafing around, so I apologize for that, but I think it should be okay.
No worries. No worries. Yeah, dude, thanks for coming on. You've been a day one supporter of the YouTube channel, and it's been a long time coming having you on the channel. I think it's really cool that you're willing to sit down with us and watch the men's relay from Soldier Hollow last year, because you were in the race, and not only were you just in the race, but you had a big part in the race, being the opening leg for Team USA. So I'd really be curious to get your perspective on the race and the breakdown of everything like that, sort of that insider's perspective. But I got to be honest with you, I thought you were going to be wearing the sunglasses to join me here today.
I was actually wearing those earlier, sitting on my porch and tanning, because it's so sunny here in Austria right now. I've been enjoying that, but yeah, no, not in the hotel though.
Yeah. What's the strategy behind the sunglasses? Because I feel like those ones only come out in like certain special occasions, because otherwise you wear the more like standard biathlon sunglasses.
I mean, the main strategy is like those ones just have pretty dark lenses, so it's got to be sunny to wear them. Like you can't be putting those on unless it's like actually a bright sunny day. So
Yeah.
of course, Soldier Hollow, they were great. Like I think the Ruhpolding relay, that was another just bluebird day, and that was the first time I raced in those. Yeah, otherwise there's not really anything deeper other than the fact that I like how they look kind of funny, and feeling wise and like performance wise, they're about the same as any other sports glasses. So although they look ridiculous, like to wear them isn't like there's no bit to commit to, because like I don't see what they look like, and they perform just as well as any other glasses I have.
Yeah.
So
here are the glasses in question for those who are wondering. But yeah, I don't know. I like it. I thought I kind of like you having them as like a special occasion glasses, but I guess that special occasion is just a really sunny day.
yeah, exactly. I mean, it's fun. I call them the speed goggles because I do think it's a funny term to use, because it's something I've been accused of having before, so might as well just commit to the bit.
Who's accusing you of having speed goggles?
Yeah, I don't know. Lots of people.
That's a deep cut, insider cut for those who know.
But also anyone, I would say most single people who travel around the world to do ski racing can be accused of having speed goggles.
Sure, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
All right, let's dive right into this race here.
Oh yeah.
All right, so we're gonna pick up the race right at the start line. I mean, I gotta be honest, in a relay, normally it's kind of like, the first leg's kind of boring, or at least the first lap, because not much happens. But since you're literally on the start line here, we're gonna watch definitely every single second of your leg here.
Sure.
What's going through your mind here on the start line with Legride? Looks like Strello's out there for Germany. I can't tell who they're Sweden, but there's some big names in the first leg.
Yeah, it was Claude for France. Sweden had Victor Brandt. And like Sweden had just won world champs with this same team, so like Victor Brandt is, although no one's ever heard of him, he's pretty darn good. So yeah, like it's really easy to discount, I would say, people on this first leg who you've kind of like never heard of or whatever, like not big biathletes, but everyone on this start line is good. And although the first lap is like, a lot of people say like, oh, it's kind of a parade lap, like people are still going hard the first lap. Not like hard. People aren't going in. They're not taking risks, but like Leigrid knows that he's one of the strongest skiers in this race, so he's going to make it hard on the other people, right? Like
Mhm.
it's in his best interest to come into the range calmer than everyone else, and he's going to do that by pushing the pace a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. One thing with this course though is uh definitely home course advantage on it because it is one of the highest altitude courses, if not the highest altitude course. You want to really focus like your attacks and efforts in kind of the first two-thirds of it, and then of course ski the rest really fast. But if you try to make a big move within a minute of coming into the range, you're still going to be feeling it.
Mm.
So like that first hill after coming under the bridge around this corner, that next hill are really where you can kind of like punch it without too much risk. And then the next hill is more you want to ski the same pace as everyone else. But if you put in a burst there, you really pay for it in the range.
Was
Um,
it tough skiing? I mean, I was at this race and it was warm, and I feel like the course, although it doesn't look too bad, I feel like it was kind of getting a little slushy. You know what I mean?
I mean, I would say it wasn't that tough just because the snow drains super well. So although it was slushy, it didn't get that deep, and it was very consistent. So it didn't rut up. There weren't like sneaky soft bits to dodge, this, that, and the other. Like it was very consistent to ski on, which was super, super nice. So
Sweet.
that's definitely that was a big bonus. And I think that's something that comes with the high altitude. Their snowmaking snow is a little bit more granular, so it allows the water to kind of fall through to the bottom. So that's why even though it was about 45 degrees in European terms, it's like 7 or 8 degrees Celsius. You don't see any like slick water showing up on top of the snow.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, so this is the hill I'm talking about where you'd really pay for it if you attack here coming into the range.
Mm.
And I know the announcers were, at least the Brits, were saying that this was one of the easiest range approaches they've ever seen, but I can say firsthand, it's absolutely not because you have the biggest climb on the course that happens right here. Then you come around the top, and there's this flat section at the top you still have to work quite hard. So you have the longest climb, followed by a flat section you have to work, pretty short downhill, and then it's actually you're gaining probably I'd say 7 to 10 meters, almost 30 feet when you come behind the range and you're skiing back through it. So although it looks like a flat section that you're coasting, it's actually a working section from once you hit the bridge all the way to about 50 meters before point 30 when that little curly Q downhill goes. So
Mm.
it's quite a bit to do.
What, like,
Um,
do you have is there a certain landmark or location in the backstretch as we're entering the range or the stadium now? Is there like a certain spot in that backstretch behind the range that you're like, okay, this is where I'm going to start thinking about shooting? Because I feel like a
um,
lot of people come across the bridge, they see the range, they see the stadium, and their brain just goes, oh, time to start shooting. But like you mentioned, you still have like half a K almost through the
yeah.
stadium to ski.
Yeah, exactly. So you can see right here, it's that little uphill. And so, yeah, you see the range and everyone's thinking about shooting. But the big one here was everybody came into the shooting point like going hard. Like you can see people are skiing as hard as they were the rest of the lap right here. And so the real like, okay, it's time to start thinking about the range, what you're going to do on the mat happened like right there. Like that's where you first see people like not using poles when they could be.
Yeah.
And so, like, for anyone who's raced at Soldier Hollow before, I'm sure you were backing off earlier than that. But this one, rewatching this replay is really kind of the shocking reminder that, like, if you're at the top level, like, those guys are skiing hard pretty much to the point. If you're going to be letting off, 100 meters before the range entry, you're done. Like, you are losing too much time. You can't afford that.
Just move us out of the way here and see the full shooting. What was your focus on the range here? I mean, your leg number one, we haven't even talked about how like, you grew up in Salt Lake City, so this is your home course. You had some home pressure this week, but like,
I mean, I was just psyched to be racing here.
yeah.
So like yeah, like I did my first ever race at this venue like 18 years before. So that was awesome. Uh in terms of focuses in the race, it was like was kind of tough to get truly like zoned in because I knew everyone, like all the volunteers,
Mm.
a ton of my family members, some of my friends, my brother, all his friends are all there. So like usually when people are like, "Yeah, go USA" at normal World Cup, you're just like, "Okay, people." But when it's someone that you personally know that you haven't seen in a while, it's like, "Yeah, whoa," it tugs at your mind a little bit more. So that was kind of a funny feeling to deal with. Otherwise, like there was I would say most of the pressure I felt was that it was just the next relay after getting fifth at world champs in the relay. And so it was like, oh boy, like we just got fifth at world champs wearing bib 14 in the relay. What can we do here? And that was most of the pressure, but like I don't know. This was one of my best ski races ever, and I was still redlined for so much of it. There wasn't that much like thinking I could do.
Mm.
So I think I kind of lucked out on that. It was one of those where I was like, I have to go for it because it's the home World Cup and you might as well try to make something happen.
Yeah. I mean, stats here. Your first shot got off in 11 seconds, 11.7. Is that like, what is that for you on average? Do you know? Is that quick to the first shot? Is that
That's
standard or?
for prone that's quick.
Yeah.
The big thing is it's like I don't know if you can look at the stats. If you look at like Strello, he goes 0+1 in prone, and I think he does it in like 23, like 23, 24, something ridiculous.
Yeah.
So if he had cleaned, he was going to be like an 18-second prone shoot. And so like I came in and I had been shooting really fast prone up to this point in the season. So I came in and I was like, just hit the target, like don't do anything extra, but it was like breathe, check natural point of aim. Okay, that's good. And just start shooting. So that was definitely fast, but it's more, I would say, like a symptom of the environment. I bet on average, the fastest shoots that we see in World Cup biathlon are first shoot of a relay, because that's where like people are kind of distinguishing themselves. And you see this pack of three form with Kritschma, Strello, and Ligreed out from the first shoot, and like they made that gap in the range that wasn't on the skis.
Yeah.
Right, everyone came in together, and now these guys are separate. And then you'll see, yeah, Claude is clawing his way back, and then I'm kind of in the second pack there with Braunhofer.
Yeah.
I forget who else.
So in this situation, it seems like Ligrid's now kind of like, all right, let's open it up here. Let's, the quote unquote parade lap is underway or is out of the way. What's going through your mind at this point? Like, are you nervous about being able to touch with them at this point? I mean, they're starting to turn it on.
I mean, yeah, I was feeling really good. So for me, I would say the big thought was trying not to lose time to those guys. So you see me, I put in that little move and came over the top of the hill in front of the people I was skiing with. A lot of that was because I knew like they're not going to let me go. They're going to hop in my draft and come around me. And I wanted that for the flat section into this hill and coming up and into the range. But that also was like, I want these guys to be going a bit faster. Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, because I wanted to keep in touch. A lot of the times you'll watch a relay and the relay splits at a certain point and you have to be in the right side of that split, because almost always, like we saw it in the first relay this year, the top three teams, like 30 seconds, and then it's a 2-minute gap back. And so it's one where you don't need an exceptional race, but it's like you just need to stick with that front group, and then stuff happens and relays tend to just split wide open. And so I knew I wanted to do all I could as the first leg to just get ahead of the split.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because I think a lot of fans think like, oh, they have the spare rounds, so if you have a miss, you can just use the spare rounds. But even in relays with the spare rounds, if you do have a miss, it can really, even if you're back by only a couple seconds, like it can really not the race almost. Like you still need to shoot clean on the first go of it,
Yeah, exactly. And loading the spares and stuff is panicky a lot of the time too. Like you're kind of holding your breath to shoot. So to do the spare, you're actually more shaky than you were for the first 5 shots. So then you really have to like focus in. It's tough to hit the spares. And it usually is about 7 seconds of time lost. So what you're seeing right now, like, oh, Sturlaw just creamed Strela on skis, right? But that's, I mean, if you count it back, I bet it's about 7 seconds. So like the amount of work Sturla had to do on that lap is like one spare.
Hmm.
And people don't really realize it. Like if you are, we average about 4 minute mile pace throughout a race. So that 7 seconds is going to be like 70 meters or so. Like it looks really big once you actually have it out. And then, yeah, coming into this standing, everyone was just going super, super hard too. Like harder than world champs into standing for sure. Yeah.
Sturla's got the miss, 2 misses.
Yeah.
It's the reset. Can you hear the others like missing while you're on the point? I know you're trying to stay focused on what you're doing, but like as you're getting set up,
Yeah.
can you hear that Sturla's just absolutely messing up on the range right now?
I couldn't hear that Sturla was messing up on the range, but like definitely the people next to me, I could hear them like hitting and stuff. And it's one of those like it does get into your head a little bit, not in like a bad way, but you're aware of it, right? So it's everyone's like, oh, stay in the zone, stay in your lane, and it's like, yeah, you can do that, but it's also like focusing on your own skiing. You don't want to run into other people. You have to be aware of what's going on around you. So for sure, I am aware of like what's happening next to me, and you especially notice it with like shooting speed. If the guy that got on the mat behind you has 2 shots down before you go, you're like, I gotta really kind of send it. But here especially, this is why I get almost no TV time in this race, because they're like, whoa, look at Sturla, he really is like 50 seconds behind Krichma.
Yeah.
And he puts in a pretty heroic last lap for sure. I think skied like 20 seconds into everyone else on that last lap. It was kind of ridiculous. But yeah, he
man, I wasn't paying attention. He had 3 penalty loops. Holy shit.
Yeah. So that was the big story of that race. But you'll see, it's like those Norwegians are they're just really good at biathlon. So yeah.
Looks like his misses were low. You're a pretty good shooter. What's your feedback from that missing low?
I sometimes, like when you just have the setup slightly wrong, your natural point of aim gets pulled low, and it's really tough to compensate for it. Like I think in the last 2 years, I've had like 3 standing misses that weren't low right. Like that's just tends to be when I get sloppy. That's where my shots go. So that's just seeing him miss low, it's pretty common, especially I think if you're breathing hard, your left arm relaxes a little bit too much, you go a little more open, and that just drops your barrel down. And then especially the Soldier Hollow range, I think the targets feel a little bit higher than they do in some other places.
How do you approach the target?
From the right. I go right to left. I try not to go up and down, because for me that I end up moving my hips, and then I think that's bad for me. Like if I have too much body movement, then it'll just amplify and get all shaky and whatnot. I will say in this shooting I hit all 5, but it was kind of a miracle. That is the shakiest shooting I've had. I spent maybe half of that shooting was aimed at the white rectangle in general, and I was just lucky with reflexes on that one for sure.
So 13 seconds to the first shot, and then your total shooting was 24 seconds, which was actually slower than your prone, which was 23 and a half or so. So that's pretty rare to have your standing be slower than your prone. But
but I would say just knowing how it felt, like it was that's totally believable, especially in the sun and the warmth. Like the mats get really grippy for prone. So, and especially with the sun baking down on it, the snow gets a little bit softer underneath, not enough to like squish down, but it really kind of hugs your elbows. You can crash down with your knees really hard, so it's really easy to hit a really aggressive prone because kind of once you're down, there's no slipping, nothing like that.
Hmm. All right, so
Yeah.
how, like, walk me through this last lap. I gotta believe that this was like, this had to have been the 2.5K of your life. I mean,
Oh yeah. It was for sure. It was one of those I kind of
it's gotta be
yeah.
crazy.
I oh yeah. But I left that last shooting and I was like, if I have any excuse at any time to go as hard, like go as deep as I possibly can, like it is right now. And it was that one where I was like, I'm gonna go as hard as I can up every hill and hope and just hope that by the end of the downhill I could actually make something happen. And yeah, it was coming up this last hill. I was skiing with Strello and I was like, you know what? Like this guy's like 11th in the overall right now, but you know what? Let's see if I can make something stick. I was like, if I had, this is the last hill on the last lap and there's a little downhill and then just like 150 meters flat. I can try as hard as I can. And so I just like started going with 2/3 of that hill left and just yeah, told myself I was like, gotta you just gotta do what I can. And yeah, fortunately I didn't hit the wall or vomit or anything, but I distinctly remember just my vision completely tunneling as I came across this bridge and I'm just telling myself like just lift up your arms. Like I that was all I could think about was like just put your hands in front of you, like your feet will catch up. But man, like I think this race was the hardest I went last winter. I was lucky to have one of those days where you can push that little bit extra through everything. But yeah, it was definitely my best ski performance last winter, I think.
Awesome. Well, I mean, I think you left the range. I'm trying to see, but I think you moved up quite a bit.
I left in sixth, I think, so
Yeah,
then
10
tagged in
seconds
third.
back.
Yeah, so I lost 3 seconds to the French or whatever, but I'll take that. Fabien Claude is an incredible athlete. So for me, having never scored World Cup points to ski 3 seconds within him in 2.5K is pretty good.
Yeah, and I mean, you
Mhm.
passed. I think you passed Germany and definitely Italy was ahead of you after.
Yep.
Um, yeah, freaking awesome, dude.
Yeah.
Um,
It was that guy cheering by the cabin, you know?
yeah, that's what it was. um, that okay. So, I mean, how did this? So, how did this start relate to the one in Nova Mesto at the World Champs? Because that was an all-time high, like really good relay for the U.S. team. Another one that you started. Obviously, this one you were clean, but you had a really good. You know, in Nova Mesto, you had 2 spares and stayed out of the penalty loop. Like knowing how well you did at the Nova Mesto one, and then you went clean and tagged off now in what, place third or whatever you tagged off in. Was there like the thought of, oh, this could be a podium day for us?
Um,
I mean, your
Honestly,
job's
no,
done.
there like I didn't really think about like, oh, this could be a podium day until I was kind of cooling down and I'm looking at like, oh shoot, you know, like Campbell's going and we're still in it. Like, wow. Um, but for me it was sort of like, okay, I did one good one and now they've put me in this position. It's like domestic relay. Uh it's yeah, it's time to really like don't mess this up. And yeah, I got, you know, lucky little hometown magic. And managed to keep it together, but it was definitely quite the that was more of the thought. I was like, okay, I had a better than like if you looked at my results last year, that opening leg in Nova Mesto was better than like the theoretical possibility of my performance. So I was like, I need another good one. And then just got lucky with like having one that was substantially better.
Mhm.
So yeah. I think it's also just part of the American like sentiment of just like amplifying your performance when it really counts, like
Mhm.
how Americans PR at the Olympics so often, things like that. And I think I had one of those moments.
Did you have any problems with the mats here? It looks like they're sliding all over the place.
No, I think that was mainly when people were getting off because the snow was like the sun was hitting the mats so hard, it was like warming up the screws that went into the snow. So then those would get pulled out. If you watch it's funny to go back and watch the German broadcast. They are so focused on the mats. They show them for probably like 5 minutes of the broadcast. Miss a lot of the action for the
Yeah,
mats. But I didn't hear a single athlete complain about mats moving at all.
I
So
feel like it's just one of
yeah,
those things that happens sometimes. But
yeah.
as we watch
But
Jacqueline.
oh yeah.
But so I mean, now that your race is over, we can. I just have like I'm more curious to hear about what was your feeling overall about last season, because you had a really successful one. Started off great at the IBU Cup, got to race world champs, your second world champs, and then obviously we're part of this great relay performance. So like, what was your feeling at the end of the season? I'm sure you gotta be pumped, right?
Yeah, at end of this season I was super pumped. I had like I it was the first season or on it was only my second season ever racing World Cups, but it was the first time I had felt more like, okay, like I'm at the World Cup, it's time to go. I belong here, whatnot. Not sort of like, oh, I'm starting World Cup because a bunch of people are sick. What's gonna happen? I got more opportunities at the World Cup and at World Champs and whatnot. So yeah, I definitely mentally it was a lot more fun, and it was fun to be able to look back and be like, oh, I did make a lot of performance gains from the year previously.
Mm.
Because you're right, you do so much testing in summer, and it's like, oh, you're fitter, oh, blah blah blah, but like really until the season starts, you don't know if you're actually better. And last season, I managed to put it together quite a few times, so really happy with that.
Mm.
Um, Especially if you compare it to the year before, where like, yeah, I'd been on the world champs team, but I felt more like a spectator at those races. And this year, I felt like I was able to throw my hat in the ring a lot more successfully.
Mm.
Yeah.
When did you make the decision that you like really wanted to go for it and be a biathlete? Because you did qualify for two junior world champs and a youth world champs. So you've been
Yeah.
you've been doing the sport for quite a while. Like, was there a time, whether it's in high school or post high school, that you were just like, let's see how far I go with this. Like, let's see if I can get to world champs. You know what I mean?
I think that moment really, like the turning point moment for me was 2020 when I decided to like move to Bozeman and actually like fully commit. Before then, like after Youth World Champs, I kind of came back from that having not had a very good time, and I was like, no, I got unfinished business. It's time to do something. But like the big change was definitely COVID year moving to Bozeman and just starting to train full time, taking an actual risk, being like, I'm not going back to online school in the fall. I'm gonna try this and see where it goes. And getting picked for the IBU Cup squad that year because of some pretty good time trial results. Uh, but that was the big turning point in terms of like kind of getting fired up to try hard though. That was definitely after Youth Worlds. I kind of started that next spring, and I was like, you know what, like I had a bad time, and I was kind of just like I qualified in third, nothing too special. I came out of that and I was like, I'm gonna get good. And then I trained wrong. Like I went hard, but I like my best advice is if you're trying to get fast, make sure you're training well. And it's so easy to fall into this attitude of like, I need to do more, I need to work harder, I need to this, that, and the other. And it's like, no, you need to train smarter than other people. And by that, it means like, yeah, you got to rest more when you're tired. You got to really kind of make sure to hit all your rest right. You got to make sure to hit your effort right. If you're doing a bunch of other things, like I had a job and was going to school at that time, it's like that's going to affect your hours too. So trying to do all of those things. And then if it means that you're only sleeping 7 hours a night, you're not going to be maximizing your potential. And so those are all mistakes that I made. But yeah, I I then had my worst year ever, 2020, didn't make the junior worlds team. And kind of after that, I was like, I'm not satisfied to be done with biathlon because I don't think I actually suck. But I need a change because I'm not happy in Salt Lake right now, and I need a, new coach, this, that, and the other, and move to Bozeman. And that was really when I fully went for it.
Yeah, that's actually really insightful. I think just having a change of scenery sometimes can be really healthy for the mind, just to like, it keeps things fresh, it keeps things new. Sometimes it's not even necessarily like needing a new coach, but just like a new training venue, just new grounds, new perspective on things. But yeah, that's really interesting what you said there, because I think you're talking about like the sort of American mentality. I think there's this American mentality of like, oh, you have to like train harder, and like good athletes train harder, but that's not necessarily true in endurance sports. I think in endurance sports like biathlon and cross country skiing, it's really all about time, like time in zone, time on skis, and even with biathlon, time with the rifle. And like you can do that. The only way you can do more time is to actually do it easier, because if you're doing it too hard, you're going to fatigue yourself, and then you're going to not be able to do more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's such a hard concept for like a youth athlete to comprehend, when every football movie, every sports movie is pushing like hard, work hard. But in
like
sports,
the Goggins mentality.
Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like, yeah, you see David Goggins referenced so much, and like I think he's a fun influencer, but man, like when I see like, people being influenced by him for like biathlon training and whatnot, and it's like that is the wrong way to do it. And I think it's also like David Goggins loves like, oh, I'm an ultra marathoner, and it's like, but he's not a good one.
Yeah.
Like that can be my hot take of the day, is that like David Goggins is a bad athlete. Like, sure, he participates in a lot of stuff, but like he gets a lot of injuries, he ignores his body, and he doesn't win things. Like, he's out there to suffer, and there's nobility in that. But if you're trying to make a biathlon team, you're not out there to suffer, you're trying to ski fast and shoot targets. And so why would you take your advice from someone who's like, heck yeah, I got 3 stress fractures, but you know what, I'm still going to the Moab 240 because getting fourth is super cool. Like, yeah, it's not an accurate thing to listen to.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a time and a place to go hard. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like you gotta, put the pedal to the metal at certain strategic points. But if you're doing that every day, you're gonna be gassed, and your body just won't be able to take it. Not even
exactly. Yeah, but I think that's something that's fun when you're looking at like the Norwegian trainings. Is like, yeah, their on weeks are big. Like, they'll do 3 weeks above 22 hours, especially the new guys that are training, I think, too much volume. They'll do big weeks that are like 3 30-hour weeks in a row, but then that off week is going to be 6 hours.
Yeah.
Right. They'll go from averaging 5 hours a day of training just about to training 3 times in 1 week. And I think that's like the important contrast, because you have to let your body have a chance to absorb training.
Yeah, I was talking to somebody at Dive UCup, and like some of them are doing near 1,000 hours of training a year, just the physical training, not even talking about the shooting and dry fire or whatever else. Like 1,000 hours of just physical training. That's insane. I mean, obviously you have to work up to that, but I remember also a couple of years ago, Martin Jandrut-Sundby, there was like rumors that he was doing like 1,200 hours a year. And there's an American skier who I'm not going to name names, but thought like, oh, I'm going to do that. And so they jumped from like 700 hours of training to like 1,200 in a single season. which if you think about it, that's nearly doubling the amount of hours that you're doing in a season. And I mean, like, we don't have the male version of a Jesse Diggins on the men's team, so I don't know if it worked so well, but
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think, yeah. And also like it's funny, but there's a huge difference sometimes between like being in great shape and being fast. Um, and like at the end of the day, like, yeah, if you can train 1,000 hours and take that volume, you're probably in great shape and you're going to be great at doing 3 hours anytime you ask your body for it. But like Johannes Bo trained 700 hours before his best season ever, 700 to 750. And last year he still dominated and he trained 600. So like it's so has to be about the quality of training and doing it right rather than doing more.
That's really interesting because I mean most juniors I would say are like on pace to be hitting about 700 hours their first year as a senior or so. So to hear that the arguably the greatest biathlete in the world, who's at this point 32 or something, that is doing less than you, that's hopefully that really sends the message home.
Yeah, or like the Petter Northug interview where they're like, "Yeah, what was your biggest training year ever?" And he was like, "Oh, my biggest year ever was like 860 hours,"
Yeah.
which is way too specific of a number for it to like be a lie. Like, you know, oh, like 860 means it was like 858 hours. So, and he is, yeah, arguably the greatest cross country skier of all time. He won 50Ks, he won sprints. Like he was super, super good. Maybe Claybo's better, but Claybo, I don't even think, like, I don't think Claybo's doing more than 1,000. And as a biathlete, it's hard to hit the same volumes that the pure Nordic skiers are hitting because just like the amount of more time you spend on your feet doing something like a combo session is like that does take a toll on you. So you can't get as much time as just a pure Nordic skier. Like going out and skiing for 2 hours with no rifle is less load on your body than doing 2 hours of skiing with combo.
Right.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah.
So there are going to be small but appreciable differences there.
Speaking of hours, did you ever do like bike racing or anything like that? Like, why do I have in my mind that you do like bike racing or something?
It's because I love road biking and I love bike racing and follow it, but I only did high school mountain bike racing.
Okay.
Yeah, I just love to follow bike racing and I have a lot of friends who bike race.
Okay.
And yeah, I've known through my family, I've known some professionals and this, that, and the other. So I love the sport, love to follow it and have a lot of kind of like personal connections with it, but I have never bike raced at a high level.
So when you're biking, do you log hours on the bike 1-to-1, like 2 hours equals 2 hours in the training log, or does a 2 hour bike equal like 1 hour in the training log?
I log it 1-to-1, but I bike with passion. So like I sometimes get irritable on bike rides because I'll be going out with other skiers and it's like, why are we right? My heart rate is 98. Like this is stupid. This is why people cut this in half because we are walking right now.
Yeah.
Like, and I wouldn't put in my training log walking to go get a coffee down the block. So why would I bike like that? So when I bike, I'm in L1, usually low to mid L1. I guess around Lake Placid now where I live, it's rolling. So I'm usually just mid L1 the whole time. But yeah, I like to go out there. And I think it's a great way if you're really trying to kind of get those systems rolling. If you can keep your heart rate in that middle of level 1. And if you eat enough, like you can ride your bike for 6 hours and not really get fatigued. But you do have to be really on it with the nutrition.
How often do you eat?
This summer when I would be doing like 4+ hour rides, I would be trying to eat like 600 calories, not 600, like probably 400 calories per hour.
Per hour. Wow.
And that would be the goal. But yeah, I would have 2 bottles, and each of my bottles I would have about 400 calories of drink mix in, and I'd try to finish half of one of those each hour, and then on the hour I would have either a scratch bar or a gel. So That's 300 to 400 calories per hour. But the big thing when you do that is your recovery is so much faster. You can finish after 6 hours and then not hit that kind of wall where you know, sit in the dining hall or sit at your table and just kind of stare at the wall while you try to force yourself to eat. If you manage to keep your nutrition up the whole time, then the recovery is way faster. You can still go do a gym session if you're really crazy, or at the very least, the next day, if it's intervals, you're not going to feel like, oh yeah, I just rode my bike 100 miles.
Yeah.
Um, so, and I like the bike for that too, because it's like, it's easy to eat. It's your stomach isn't getting shaken around. There's nothing like that happening. So yeah, there's no way I could eat that much on a run. And there's also no way I could run for 6 hours without totally destroying my body.
I think the longest activity I ever did was a 6-hour run. But in all honesty, the last like hour and a half of that was just kind of like shuffling around because I was like you said, my body was just threatened.
Yeah. Well, it's also, there's so much load on your joints and things like that. And so it's just, it's a tough way to train. I love, so like 2-3 hour mountain run adventures, getting on top of stuff. I love that. But yeah, if I really try to hit hours, if I can hold my heart rate at 125 to 130 beats per minute for 6 hours on the bike, that's good training for me. Like, as that's about the same heart rate it would be on a mountain run, but I can just go for 3 more hours and then not feel it the next day. So for me, that's a great method of training.
So we talked about, like, I mean, last season was such a good one for you. Going into this year, what are some of the goals? We're only 2 weekends of the IBU Cup and 1 weekend of the World Cup into the season now. So what are some of your goals for this upcoming season, knowing the success you had last year?
I would love to get on the podium at an IBU Cup.
2 times.
Yeah, like I've been in the flowers. I'm like, okay, I want to get on the podium. And those gosh darn Norwegians are fast. And then the Germans are also fast. And then so is everyone else. So need some stars to align for that. But I'd like to think it's still in the realm of possibilities. And then if I get opportunity on a World Cup, I've still never scored points. So I want to do that. But I think stars align, I might be able to hit a top 20 on the World Cup too, if I have good shape and good skis and good shooting all on the same day. I think a top 20 is also in the realm of possibilities for me, but yeah, hopefully I can get the opportunity for that too. And
yeah,
it's all just racing. Like, at the end of the day, I can be happy if I know I put it all together and reached close to my potential. Because I think the most frustrating thing for athletes is having races where you know you weren't close to how well you can do. Like, it's such a weird feeling, and it's kind of, it doesn't really matter how the results are. Like, you can have a good numerical result and be like, but I failed to execute here and here and didn't really feel it in this way. And then you can also have the opposite where you don't do that well, but you're like, I did as well as I could have on this day, and be much more satisfied with that result.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really difficult thing to sort of come to this conclusion, because everyone wants to be number one, right? But you can't, there's so many things out of your control that, like, being number one might just be impossible that day, like even at like a local biathlon race, someone with the talent of Johannes Tingesbo could show up and win, and that's completely out of your control. But if you can put together a good biathlon race and feel like you executed good skiing, good shooting, and put together your best performance, then that's all you can ask for. And then it just feels good when that good performance also equates to a good number on the results list.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and yeah, some days your team doesn't hit the skis, and it's good to know that you went out there and like did what you could, right? Like, that's way more satisfying than maybe having a great result and finishing and being like, gosh, like, I felt like I couldn't balance on my skis and really feel like I could have pushed harder, but just couldn't make myself do it. Like, that's such a frustrating feeling.
Yeah. All right, as we come into shooting 6, Italy still in the lead. It's kind of
Yeah.
crazy. Nobody, I
And
don't think anyone had the Italian men in the lead
I mean,
deep into the race.
I don't think anyone had them in the lead, but after Norway and France both did penalty loops, like those guys were coming off a run, with the exception of world champs, of being on the podium in like every relay since the new year. So I don't think anyone was that surprised. I think the big surprise was Norway battling back after 1.5 legs. Sturlaw's 3 penalty loops.
Yeah.
Like
I mean,
Italy hasn't done a penalty loop and Germany hasn't done a penalty loop. And Norway is now skiing away in the lead by a significant margin. And they've done 3. So there's Campbell getting out in second, and then Benedict Dahl chasing him down. And that this was kind of that moment where I was like, oh shoot, like something could happen, because you see Bionas still standing there on the point, having a pressure spare.
He's doing like the crouching, trying to get his legs back under him.
Yeah, and he hit it, like, good on him. That kind of pressure, that last spare, and missing it means a penalty loop. That is a high pressure scenario to be in. Yeah. But yeah, now it's just a ski race between him, Benny Dahl, and Campbell Wright. And that was, this was the moment where I was kind of like, oh boy. And this is the split that I was talking about. You see those top 4 within a minute, and here's Ukraine hitting the loop,
penalty loop,
and Austria and Slovenia haven't even started shooting yet.
Yeah.
And it's like, time's ticking down. What is it at? Yeah, a minute 13, and nobody's close to getting off the mat yet. So that's the split. The podium or 4th place is 43 seconds back, and then it's another it's going to be a minute behind that to the next person. And so it's all about really getting ahead of the split, because Sean didn't have a stupendous leg. Campbell is on incredible ski form, but nobody really did anything that special. So like I tagged in 3rd, which was great for me, but it was just in the mix. Like I could have lost 10 seconds in 4 places and we would have been in the same spot. And like you just got to get ahead of that split. And you can see that here, right? There's a race between those top 4, and then there's another race, but they're not the same race at this point.
Can you tell me a little bit about, like, I'm trying to think of the best way to phrase this, but I think the level at the international biathlon level, whether it's IBU, World Cup, or Junior Worlds, is so high all the way down the board. Like, what happens when you show up and suddenly it's just like, hey, every single second counts? I mean, you can do a time trial in the US, you can do intervals or whatever, and like, okay, you're getting fatigued, maybe you don't push over the top of the hill, maybe you don't hit the transition perfect, but then suddenly you're in this field of 100 athletes, or, in this case, not necessarily 100, but highly competitive athletes, and every single second counts. Is there ever a moment in your mind where you're just like, oh, I kind of have to put like comfort out the window a little bit, and I just need to dig? And I mean, I think I recall you telling me something about like a race strategy a couple of years ago, of just like, it's not necessarily a race strategy, but just like you send it, or like risk it. Pretty much have to risk it for the biscuit from the start line, almost.
Oh, exactly. I think like it boils down to like, you show up and everyone is as good as you are, if not better. And you're like, well, shoot, now I have to be better than me. And to me, what that means is, like, you see in the US so often, you have these trials races and this, that, and the other, and people race within themselves because they're trying to qualify. And they're like, I know if I race well, I can qualify. But it's also like, internationally, the level is much higher. And like Campbell Wright, best guy in the US, has to go for broke to make something happen. And so like you have to practice that. And something I've said, which I'm kind of proud to come up with, was you can't until you can, so you might as well try. And to me, what that means is, it's like, you don't know when you're going to be capable of hitting that crazy result. But if you go out there and race conservatively, you're never going to. But if you go out there and ski the first lap like you're trying to put yourself on the podium, then maybe you hit all your targets in the first shooting. And then you ski the second lap and maybe you still hold it together like you're going to hit the podium, but you have to take those risks. And if you don't do that, then like, why even go out there?
Yeah. How do you do that effectively? You know what I mean? Like, how do you do that without, because I also see this a lot of times at junior worlds where an athlete shows up, they see the bright lights of international competition and they're just like, I'm going to win it. They go for it from the gun and completely implode. They shoot 4 misses. They completely burn out and it's just a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, how do you send it from the gun effectively?
I think the big thing is you got to practice it. You got to practice that sending it. So, of course, you got to practice the practice shooting with your heart rate super high. A lot of those people, they've never done it before. So you come in, you've never hit the mat that going that hard, because in the US we have this crazy lie that gets spread around. They're like, oh yeah, you gotta, half a K to go, gotta start toning it down. It's like, no, you don't. Like, ski to the mat. So you have all of these things that are different, and then all these people are like, oh, I gotta pace it, it's a 10K. And it's like, no, it's not that long. And right, like you will surprise yourself with how capable your body is if you really just go for it. But I think it's key, like you can, but if you do that for the first time at your first junior worlds or first IBU Cup or something, like it's not going to go well. You need to practice it. So you got to go for broke more and more often. But I think, yeah, it is worth it once you get to that international level. Like, you're going to be doing a few races, so you might as well send it, because at the end of the day, like, telling somebody you got 45th instead of 65th is like, nobody cares about that. Like, it is a small victory, and I'm not taking that away, but like, if on your best day you could do way better than that, you have to try for every day to be your best day, because like, you are never going to have a good race and come through the finish line and be like, oh, I didn't really go for broke on the skis. Like, you need to do that to have a good race. And you're same thing with, you're not going to have your best race and be like, oh, I didn't take any risks in the shooting range. Like, you have to take those risks and you have to go for broke to make it happen. So going out there and not doing that, it is ridiculous to me. Like, that's how you train to practice certain things. So of course, like, you don't go for broke on the skis if you're trying to keep your lactate controlled. You don't go for broke on the range if you're working on, like, say, your trigger squeeze. But you do, like, once you are at that competition level, you want to make sure to have practice that. So, do some range games or do some 1 minute level 5 intervals straight to the mat, and then try to shoot fast so that you get the feeling. But yeah, it's, if you're trying to maximize your performance, you have to be ready to actually ask your body for everything it's got. And if you're not willing to do that, then why put on the bib?
Yeah, I think this is the interesting thing that, like, Jesse Diggins has champion of, is like that sort of pain cave mentality. And like we were talking about Goggins, like, okay, if you want to get to that pain cave, like, be stronger, go harder. Like, that's kind of where it comes in that sort of situation. That's where it has a role in your training. Obviously, you can't do that every day, like we were talking about earlier, but in those specific workouts where it's like, hey, today we're going hard, or you don't even have to go hard in the shooting range. I mean, you can practice shooting fast, being competitive with your teammates, the people around you, any day, and it's not going to take from your shooting, or sorry, from your physical ability. But yeah, I don't know. It's. Do you feel like you're at a disadvantage being a continent away from the Norwegians, the Germans, all the Europeans? Because like, when you show up to the first IBU Cup, it kind of is a little bit of like a crapshoot of like, okay, where am I? compared to my competitors. You know, you haven't raced these guys in 6 months, and who knows if your summer of training was like good or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's that feeling, but I don't think it's really a disadvantage now that I've seen the level so much. Um, it's definitely like when you see it for the first time, it's a crazy experience. Like I remember my first IBU Cup, and you see guys that are skiing faster than you've ever seen, and they're shooting faster and more accurately than you have ever seen. And the thing is, like, you can't imagine that. Like, it doesn't matter how many super tours you've watched in West Yellowstone, like how many NCAA championships you've watched. Like those guys are better at the IBU Cup level. They're better, and you it's tough to kind of try to hold yourself to that high of a standard if you don't know that standard exists, right? Because like of course the TV effect, like I'm watching this relay and it's like, oh, they don't look like they're going that fast, and it's
I was
like,
just
but
about
they
to
are.
say, yeah, you don't
They're
get the
going faster
effect by
than that.
watching it.
Yeah, right. And you kind of gotta, like, if you watch it in person, that's when you realize, like, oh yeah, look at Christensen, he looks nice and relaxed, but he's going probably 14 miles an hour right there through slush on an uphill. And like most people in the US, unless you are a professional skier, you can't do that. You could not keep up with him for 1 minute.
Hmm.
And he's looks like he's just chilling there. And so that's where like you really have, like, I remember watching Philip Anderson ski at my first IBU Cups, and it's like he looks like he's chilling, but man was he going fast. And it's one
Yeah.
of those like, oh, that's what it looks like, because I thought I was going in, and this Norwegian guy skied past me going a little bit less than my cadence and just blew my doors off. And like I knew I wasn't that bad, but this guy was that much better.
Yeah.
And then guys on the World Cup are another tier above that. So yeah, I think once I know that the standard exists, it's much easier to train and hold myself to it. But before you get the chance to see it in real life, it's really tough to do it. It's like trying to learn calculus if you don't know what calculus is, right? You need to see the textbook to be like, oh, here's how to practice it. But if you've never seen it, then you're not going to be able to just come up with it unless you're absolute prodigy.
Right.
So yeah, it's fun to see. So I don't know. My best advice to people, juniors or trying to break onto the IBU Cup is just remember that like the guys are, you gotta hold yourself to a high standard. Every single person on the World Cup shoots probably 90% on average in training. Like every single person.
Hmm.
And same things like that. Like, if you finish a time trial and you look and your shooting times are 40 seconds each time and it wasn't crazy conditions, like, yet again, like, if you want to be competitive, you gotta do better than that.
Yeah.
Just things like that. All those, like you were talking about, transitions you didn't push over, things like that. Like, once you see the level, like, those guys aren't making those mistakes. Like the guys winning World Cups don't make those mistakes. Like you don't win a World Cup despite not doing something right.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely not today. And I mean, like, even at the junior level, Isak Fry cleaned up at Junior Worlds last year, and now he's cleaning up on the IBU Cup, and will probably get some World Cup start spots if he hasn't already. And like that's the standard, that's the level now, and it's you gotta be good. I think you also gotta just hold yourself accountable, right? Like you can be happy with, okay, hey, I felt good, I feel like I skied well, but yeah, if you're really looking for that next level, you got to find those, what was that transition that you didn't hit? Like maybe you could have pulled one more time instead of just getting straight into the tuck over the top, or yeah, I don't know. There's you really have to be like self-critical and be like, where's that 1 second I can gain here, there, anywhere, because that 1 second could be the difference between, like you said earlier, 60th and 45th.
Yeah. And that's just the level. And it's tough it's kind of tough to believe it too, right? We're both big biathlon fans, being like, well, biathletes are so good, but like, yeah. And Of course, me as a cocky 19-year-old, I would be like, those guys aren't that good. But like, then I saw them and I realized they were, in fact, better than that good. So,
Who are
yeah,
some of
it
the
is.
Who are some of the people you raced at Junior World who are on the World Cup now, or like names that we might recognize?
Eric Perro,
Oh, that guy's not
raced.
bad.
Yeah, he's aight. Yeah, he kicked my butt at Junior Worlds a couple of times. Tommy Jacomel, uh, who I remember at Youth Worlds in Slovakia, he was skiing the fastest times. Nick Hartweg, he won the individual at the Youth Worlds I did. Otto Invenius, is another good one. Lavro Planko.
Mm.
And then some of the other people who have been at Junior Worlds I've done are like Johanna Puff, who's on World Cup for Germany, Selena Grosjean, but more notably later when she went to Kazakhstan, raced up at Junior Worlds and just absolutely cleaned up. That was a crazy move.
Yeah.
Especially because she went after winning Open European Championships as a youth.
Yeah.
Trying to think if there's any other notable people who kind of have come out of the woodwork, right, who didn't have any crazy Junior Worlds results, but then really lifted their game to the World Cup. And I can't think of any crazy ones yet. Like, yeah, I've done better now on the IBU Cup than I ever did at Junior Worlds. So
yeah,
that's a fun stat, but I think that's pretty common for a lot of people.
Career development just before we got on here, and it is kind of interesting how it's like even as you've up the level, your performance has met the occasion. So that's probably pretty inspiring for yourself just to know that like you're continuing to improve.
Yeah, I mean, it's like yes and no. It was also like I was training real stupid when I was 20 years old, so it definitely helps to not be doing that anymore. So yeah, it's for me, it's all about progression too. That's where I have fun, is coming into a new season and being able to try harder, essentially. So that's what's fun with it, is if I was just stagnating at the same level, just hitting 30th place on the IBU Cup every day for 4 years, I would never get in that situation. I would be out of the sport well before that.
Just as a motivation thing, or you think like someone place you?
Like if I couldn't see like those kernels of improvement, or couldn't see like ways that I could still improve on kind of the macro level and be able to chase that, like I would get demoralized so quickly with a lack of progression.
Yeah, I mean that's something that every athlete's you gotta overcome that to a certain extent, because everyone's going to go through ups and downs. But yeah, at like what point is it to be like, well, this isn't productive anymore?
Yeah.
Which is the reason
it's like
I'm now here. I'm not your teammate on the IBU Cup or something.
Yeah. Well, it's also one where it's like if I put in my best, like if I had a performance at like Soldier Hollow Trials and I was like, that was a good race, and I just didn't make the team, I'd be like, you know what? I can accept that. I am just not good enough. And that's fine. Like I don't need to keep flogging this, right? I don't need to train full time to not be good. There are a lot of other things to do in life, I think. So yeah, for me, it's all about like the pie in the sky dream that I can be quite good at some point. So yeah, I'm very much chasing that. And yeah, if all the evidence is pointing toward me not progressing or not having a chance at being good, then it's like, oh, like there's nothing to chase. And right now, like I have enough glimmers. I'm like, okay, there's some like maybe, and that's all I need. So yeah, that's why biathlon's so good though. It gives you those glimmers, right? Like if you have a great ski day and you miss a ton of targets, and you're like, I can have that same ski day and hit the targets at some point. Yeah, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah,
but
that's a dangerous game to play, though. I mean, everybody, every coach does it, but it's tough.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's that. It's such a dangerous game, but it's definitely like it's important to critically evaluate yourself too. Like if you thought you had a good day and it wasn't good, like you have to go back and look at what happened and what's going on, or yeah, why you didn't hit those targets, or maybe you just look at your skiing and be like, oh, is there something you can technically improve a lot, or do you just not have it?
Mhm.
Um, because yeah, the sport is dangerous because you can always pull some positives, but at the same time, I don't think you should always pull some positives. Like this is a terrible like and by the American sport morality system, this is a terrible thing to say, but like professional sports are not for everyone. And that's why they exist, right? Like we wouldn't watch the NBA if everybody could do it, but we like watching the NBA because it's not for everyone.
Mm.
Um, and that's the same thing for all professional sports. Like you don't like it is not a meritocracy. Like you do not get your results based on how hard you work. You get your results based on how fast you race.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, if you are outworking everyone and you're being smarter and training better and they are kicking your butt, tough.
I mean, I
Then
know that.
and that's just how it goes.
Yeah.
Like I am never going to write the America's greatest romance novel, right? Like I could sit down at a desk and try and try and try and try, but that does not mean I deserve to have it read by hundreds of thousands of people and made into a movie. And doesn't matter how much time I spend on it.
Yeah.
Like sports are the same way. Like it's all about the time it takes from the start line to the finish line, and that's it.
Yeah. Speaking of the start line to the finish line, what about Hoffer's strategy here in the last lap? He just put in a little surge on that first climb out of the range, and Narvat here immediately brought him back in. If you're Hoffer in this situation, I feel like you're kind of in the disadvantage because you're in the front. What's your strategy here, you think?
Ooh, so this course, it's like, I mean, there's kind of two ways to do it. You either want to go on that last climb and really try to break the person you're with so that they can't suck into your draft, or what you want to do is really take it pedestrian up that last climb if you think you can smoke them in the last 100 meters. Um, and you can see Hoffer here is really, he's not willing to put in that much work. But you can also see the way that Narath didn't catch back up, that the Italians have incredible skis right now. And in these conditions, the ski differences can get pretty big
Yeah.
because of the amount of water in the snow. So
Yeah.
I think at this point, Hoffer knows he has incredible skis. You can see both these guys, they're going hard, but there's no hop skate. And then there you see Hoffer put in an effort there. You do have to remember, Narath was top 10 skier on the World Cup last year. So Hoffer is trying all of his tricks to really get past this guy, because at the end of the day, I'm thinking that Narath could outwork him. And I also think Narath could have won this lap, but what he needed to do was go to the front at the beginning and charge. Like, I think that would have definitely blown Hoffer's doors off.
Yeah.
But by allowing him to play this cat and mouse, you have a guy who I think is a bit more explosive and a bit speedier in the short distances, able to just kind of able to dictate the race. And that's exactly the wrong thing to do. Like if you're fitter than someone, like you've seen it, the Johannes Bo versus Emilian Jacqueline at Antholt's World Champs, right? Like Johannes Bo wins that race 10 times out of 10 if they're not next to each other. Like Johannes Bo leaves with a 3-second advantage, he wins that last lap every time. But they leave together, all of a sudden it becomes someone else's game. So the best thing to do, I think, is to figure out what game you want to be the best at and then force the other person to play that. So you see here, like they're V1ing, that hill's not that steep. Like if they were both going as hard as they could, they would be they'd be V2ing or V1ing more aggressively. And then here you see Hoffer gets, like, he's always going to get the jump a little bit because he's in front. So when he decides to make the move, he has that half second of reaction time already. And then
I mean, it's kind of
he's got those incredible skis. And
it's stupid of
yeah.
Narvat stay behind them, because he's now demonstrated 3 times that when Hofer turns it on, he has the advantage. So like Narvath should just go around him and just be like, fine, I'm going to open up that 3-second gap and make you try to work for 2K, as opposed to just basically giving him a 100-meter sprint to just go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. So you see, Hofer went for it with 50 seconds left in the race, and like there's not a big difference there. And you see Narath, he's hurting, but like I think Narath could have gone that fast for 2 minutes, and Hofer could not.
Yeah.
But Hofer could go a little bit faster for 40 seconds. And so I think this is what I mean by you pick the game that you're going to be good at, and then you force other people to play it.
Mhm.
So like Hofer got in front, and then Narath was like, all right, I can hang with this pace easily. But that's exactly what he wanted. Probably the thing that Hofer didn't want was for Narath to go around and just go really hard from the bottom of the hill, because that takes away the snap. But also these, right, armchair expert right here, it's so easy to have expert commentary. I say that in air quotes when you're not in it, right? It's like Mike Tyson thing, everyone's got a plan till they get punched in the face. Or I don't know, like, but I think that's such a valid quote, right? It's so easy to be like, oh, I can't believe he missed that last shot, just nerves. And it's like, unless you've shot standing with your heart rate at 190 beats per minute, then don't be saying that, because it's not quite as simple as everyone makes it look, and it takes hundreds of hours, thousands of hours of practice to make it look like it's not hard.
Here we go. USA crossing the finish line now, 4th place, best relay performance ever. What does that like? What does that mean when I say that? You're part of the best relay performance in U.S. biathlon history.
I don't know. It's weird. It's fun because, like, it's a good race. It's clearly a great race, but at the end of the day, too, it's kind of funny. Like, I've never scored a World Cup point, and so like I'm pretty sure I had a top 40 on the World Cup performance that day, but like individually, and you looked over my results statistically, I'm not someone who should have been on the greatest World Cup relay team ever for the US. So it's one of those where it's like, it was a bit surreal, and it was super fun to come in and put a great relay on for the US crowd. But it's there's some funky sentiments there for sure.
Has this result, like, any fallout from this result? Any doors open up? Like any, I don't know, you hear anything about this since it happened, or is it just kind of like, like we did that, let's keep moving forward?
I mean, I would say on the team, like it's a big source of motivation, because everyone was like, like we had a great relay, but like it's so close to the podium, right? It's like, if we were a little bit faster, we would have all had some hardware. And so I think it's been a big motivator in terms of like doors opening and whatnot. Like, not really. 4th place is 4th place. It's tough. You go to anyone in the US and you're like, hey, I was on a relay and you got 4th. They're like, yeah, whatever. What's biathlon? Fellow biathletes, they get it, right? Like Slovenia is like, dang, that was good. Good stuff, right? Finland gets it. Switzerland gets it. Kind of all those countries, they get it, right? But I think a big thing too that kind of got us a lot of credit amongst biathletes was putting together a 5th and then a 4th place relay with a team that on paper should not be able to do that. But now you watch the guys in Kontiolahti just put down a 6th place relay and not have that great of shooting, not do anything special. And it's one of those where it's like, okay, the team is actually incredibly strong. So it's really cool to be part of that.
Yeah, and I was actually going to rebuttal you. I think on paper you guys are that you're giving yourself credit for, but I don't know. It's pretty exciting to be a part of the development of U.S. biathlon right now, because I think we're in a really good era, especially since for at least for the last 5 to 7 years or so. I think this is the strongest we've been. And it's really cool that you're a part of that and you're contributing to that. So Yeah, man. Thanks for the time today. Thanks for coming on. Any last words? Anything else you want to say? Any shout outs or anything?
Yeah. My last words, I would just say, avoid what we call team jacket syndrome, right? Sports like are not for participation, they're for performance. So like making trips is really cool, but if you are 18 years old and you want to make youth worlds and that's your big goal, you will qualify on December 28th or whatever. And most of the season happens after December 28th. So make sure that you keep going and like, reach for the stars. So if you fall, you land on the clouds is my best advice there. Like if you're trying to make junior worlds, be like, I want to move up in the pursuit in junior worlds. And that's the standard I'm going to hold myself to. Because if you hold yourself to that standard, then you're going to make the trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, just don't make it all about being somewhere, make it all about doing something. So yeah, hit 90% of your targets, ski the pants off all your competition. But yeah, don't worry about where you're going to be, worry about how you're going to do when you're there.
That's awesome. All right, Vinny, I'm sure we'll have you on again. Hopefully not
Sweet.
not too far. Yeah, thanks for the time. I know this was a big hour of your life in the middle of race season, so I appreciate it. But
my pleasure.
Yeah, good luck for the rest of the season, and I know that we'll be cheering you on from the States.
Sounds great. Yeah, and I will see you in Bozeman for nationals. I'll be there. So if you want to race me, show up.
All right. Start chirping Vincent on social media.
Do it. I can handle it, I think. All right. Thanks, Brian. Bye-bye.